we are very happy to host this session together with Thammasat University, the faculty of sociology and anthropology. We are going to have the session this morning on the land reform because we have a very good opportunity that we have farmers from Southeast Asia and East Asia of La Via Campesina to have a regional meeting, and we think that the experience that our farmers in this region have gained from many years on the land, on the struggle for land to reform access to land and the struggle to all kinds of problems related to land, which is very critical for farmers. And this is all the valuable experience that we would like to share with our friends in Thailand. So with the good support from the university, we are able to have this session. So before we start, I would like to invite Dr. Anuson Unno, the faculty dean, to give us the opening remark.
Okay, good morning everybody. On behalf of Faculty of Sociology and Anthropology at Thammasat University, we are very much grateful to have a chance, to be part of the host to hold a forum on the land reform. Actually, okay, I forgot to welcome you all. Sorry about that. I'm very excited because never have a chance to do something like this because this is my first time to open a ceremony like this. But anyway, we are very pleased and very honored holding a forum on the land reform issue. This is not only because this issue is the pressing one for small-scale farmers in general, but I think because it's also because it's very much timely for Thai farmers in particular, given the fact that Thai farmers' problems over the past few weeks, I think, have been very much over-politicized. As you have seen, we have the rice mortgage scheme. And this scheme, has been part of, the government's policy, the previous one. But given the fact that, there are some shortcomings in the project, and it's very interesting that such shortcomings have been dragged into the political conflicts. So I think to talk about, farmers' problems, in particular in terms of land reform, probably might give us, a more comprehensive view on what Thai farmers and farmers in general have been faced over the past, I think, probably 10 years or decades. Yesterday, our faculty held a talk on social justice, looking how this concept is defined and practiced across disciplines, including political science, law, philosophy, and anthropology. Anyway, we have not have much chance to take a look at this issue in terms of concrete realities or what the problems took place on the ground. So hopefully today we will have an opportunity to think about the issue of social justice, in terms of land reforms and in terms of the problems farmers, especially the small scale ones, have been faced, in their daily life, in their real life. And I think now it's time. The time is appropriate to open the ceremony. So I would like to take this opportunity to open this forum officially. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. For this morning, we have two sessions. The first session, we would have the keynote address, and after that, we will have the panel discussion. So I would like to invite Mashima-san to give us the keynote address. Perhaps you can either take a seat here or yeah. I'd like to the topic for the keynote address is land reform for food sovereignty and social justice. Just like Dr. Anusar mentioned that yesterday there was a discussion about social justice. Then we would have a chance to learn about this issue from small-scale farmers. Mr. Majima is the vice chair of Nominglen, member of La Via Campesina in Japan, and he will speak in Japanese, and we have the translation to English, right? Okay.
おはようございます。
Good morning.
了解いただきました真島義孝です。
I'm 真島義孝。
私はタイを1996年1月に初めて訪れました。今度で4回目のタイ訪問になります。
My first visit to Thailand was January 1996, and this is the fourth visit.
今回の訪問にあたって読んだ論文で、1974年11月にタイ全土から1万人の農民たちがこの玉沢大学に集まって劇的な集会を開いたということを知りました。
Before coming here this time, I have learned that in November 1974, 10,000 farmers across the country gathered here in Thammasat University and held a historical meeting.
私、タイの農民の戦いの歴史が刻まれたこの大学で開かれたフォーラムでキーノートスピーチをする機会を与えていただいた大変光栄に思います。
I am honored to have an opportunity to give a keynote address in this university that holds a special place in the pages of history.
私が今日話したいのは戦前の既成地主制度を解体した日本の農地改革の経験を紹介すること、それから現在日本政府と世界の財界が農地改革の成果を繰り返す策論に出ていること、そしてアジアの世界の仲間とともに世界正義と食料主権のための農地改革のために戦うという方向性を探り共有することであります。
Today, I'd like to speak three things. First, introduce Japan's experience on the land reform that dismantled parasitic landlord system. Second, accuse the Japanese government and business circles of plotting to overturn the fruits of this land reform. Third, find and share the way to fight for land reform for food sovereignty and social justice together with our friends in Asia and the world.
第二次世界戦争で日本軍国主義が敗北するまで日本の地主勢力は農地のおよそ半分を支配して労働人口の約5割を占める貧農から 40% から 50% の戸籍を収奪していました。
Until the end of the World War II, when the Japanese militarism was defeated, landlords controlled about half of the total agricultural land in Japan. The landlord exploited peasants who occupied about 50% of the national population and imposing farm rent of 40 to 50% of their annual yield.
農地改革は1945年11月から1950年8月までの5年間という非常に短期間のうちに実施されました。
The agrarian land reform program was implemented in Japan for 5 years from November 1945 to August 1950.
農地改革の結果、土佐口の全部ではありませんけれども 80% を超える約200万ヘクタールが開放されて、地主制度は基本的に解体されました。
As a result, over 80% or approximately 2 million hectares of land was released, and the landlord system was destroyed from its foundation. land tenancy was reduced to 10% from 46%, and then further fell to less than 5% in later years.
ちなみに私が生まれたのは1949年ですから、私自身は農地改革の最中に生まれて、しかし農地改革の私は知りません。
I was born in 1949, and that means I was born just during the land reform period.
しかし私は先輩たちから大変多くのことを勉強させてもらいました。
Of course, I don't know what happened in the. I have no past experience about the land reform, but I learned a lot from my ancestors.
日本の農地改革と他の国々の農地改革を比較して研究する機会もありました。
And I have a time to compare the land reform in Japan and land reform in other countries.
その結果、日本の農地改革は非常に徹底したものでありました。第一に、不在存地主の所有地は全て国家が買収しました。
The reform in Japan was thorough with the following points. First, all tenant land owned by absentee landlords was purchased by the government.
在存地主、村にいる地主の所有戸籍地も1ヘクタールを超える貸付地は全て国家が買収しました。
For the resident landlord, the ceiling of land holding was set up to 1 hectare, and those which exceeded the ceilings were all purchased by the government.
国家が買収した戸籍地は国家が戸籍能に売り渡しました。これは地主の介入と圧力を排除するためでした。
And the government resold the tenant and agricultural land to peasants, and this is to prevent the landlord from interfering and pressuring in this process.
地主からの買収も戸籍能への売り渡しもすべて有償で行われました。で、買収譲渡の価格は土地の市場価格によってではなくて、土地を買い取る戸籍能の経営に配慮して決められました。
And both purchasing from landlords and selling to tenants were conducted with payment. The prices for purchasing and reselling were set not according to the land market prices, but in consideration of the peasants' financial abilities.
ちょっとエピソードを加えますと、10R、日本で言えば米が500キロから600キロ取れますけども、その水田を戸籍能が国から買い取るのに、鮭1匹、サーモン1匹の値段だったということがあります。
For example, if you buy the land of 10R of the land, the farmers have to just pay a cost of one sum. It's very very low price.
農地の開放を受けた農家数がおよそ475万戸で、これは当時の農家の 80% に相当しました。そしての地主の土地所有というものが完全に解体されました。
4.75 million farm households benefited from the land reform. That was 80% of the total farming households at the time. The land reform program dismantled land ownership system by the landlord class.
戦後日本の農業政策の中心は農地改革によって生まれた家族経営をバックアップでした。その中心は2つありました。
The core of the post-war agriculture policy in Japan was to support newly born family farmers created by the agrarian reform. And for that purpose, there was two major programs.
地主制度の復活を何としても阻止するために、農地の所有権と利用権を家族経営農民だけに限定して、特に資本、企業の農地取得を禁止しました。こういう農地制度を作りました。
the agricultural land systems that limited rights to own and use agricultural land exclusively to family farmers and prohibited capital, corporations from acquiring land in order to prevent the revival of landlord system.
もう一度強調したいと思いますけれども、企業の農地取得を禁止したというところに大変大きな特徴があります。
The distinction of the Japanese land reform is that to prevent corporations from acquiring land.
それから2つ目の政策の中心は家族経営農民に農産物の生産コストを償う価格を保障するそういう制度を作り上げたことです。
The second characteristic is that the price guarantee system that ensures the farmers gain prices that can cover the cost of the production.
農地制度について言えば、1952年に農地法が作られて、40年間にわたって、いろいろな改正が行われてきましたけれども、基本精神は今も変わっておりません。
Regarding the agricultural land reform in particular, the agricultural land law as the basic law to maintain the results of the agrarian reform program was established in 1952 to prevent the land rollback of the progress created by the agrarian land reform. This agricultural land law was partially revised several times during the last 40 years. However, the fundamental spirit represented by the law has been maintained until this day.
基本精神というのは、農地は耕作者が自ら所有することが一番適切なんだという基本精神です。
The principle of the land law is that it is most appropriate for agricultural land to be owned by those who cultivate the land on their own.
日本の大資本は土地の投機と価格釣り上げ、これが日本の資本の高度成長にとって大きな源泉にしてなりました。で、したがって日本の法人の所有地は宅地でおよそ4分の1、25%。だからその他の土地の 60% に及んでいますけれども、農地についてはわずか 3% を所有しているに過ぎません。
Japan's big capital has depended on land speculation and highly manipulated land price as the major resources for high economic growth. But at present, private corporations own 25% of residential land and 60% of land for other uses. However, corporations own only 3% of agricultural land.
これが以上が日本の農地改革のごく簡単な経過の紹介です。後で英文のもう少し詳しい日本の農地改革に紹介した英文がありますので、後で必要な方は受け取っていただきたいと思います。
This is the core of Japanese land reform program. But I have also an English document which describes the detail of the land reform. So later I will distribute this detailed paper.
今現在の話なんですけども、今やっぱり日本の多国籍企業とそれを支援する政府、行使する政府は家族経営に難癖をつけて何千年も前から続く古臭いモデルだという言い方で家族経営をやめさせる、小農民に農業から撤退を求める、そういう段階に入っています。
Now I'd like to talk about the current situation. Today, Japanese corporations and the Japanese government that serves these corporations urging farmers to leave the farmland and claiming that family farming is an old business model of many thousands years ago.
今彼らが描いているモデルはTPP 参加を当然前提にしていますけれども、日本の農地の一部で効率的な農業、企業農業をやらせて、その他の非効率な農地の大部分を潰す、政府の試算によると 60% の農地が潰れると試算してますけども、大部分を潰す、そういうモデルであります。
Now, based on the expectation of Japan's entry into TPP, the government, the model the government has designed it to promote a corporate agriculture that focuses only on efficiency in some parts of Japan's agricultural land, while at the same time destroying most of the farms that are efficient. So it's about 60%.
現在、日本の食料自給率は 39% と非常に低い。日本の人口は世界の 2% を占めるに過ぎませんけども、その日本が世界の貿易に出回る食料の 10% を開発するという、そういう事態をさらに進めようというのが政府の狙いです。
Japan's present food self-sufficiency rate is 39%, which is extraordinarily low. Only 2% of the world population live in Japan. However, Japan buys up 10% of all the food that is dealt in the world trade. So they will still continue to, the government is still continuing to destroy the agriculture and increase dependency on imported food.
日本政府は昨年12月に新しい農業の構造改革政策を決めました。
In last December, the Japanese government approved its structural reform policy in agriculture.
これは第一にTPP を受け入れて米や小麦などの穀物、それから豚肉、牛肉や酪農製品などの畜産物、それから砂糖などの輸入を自由化する。
Here is the points of the structural reform policy. First, accepting the TPP, Japan will liberalize imports of agricultural products, including grain, such as rice and wheat, and livestock products and sugar.
で、それも TPP 入って買ってだけじゃなくて、事前調整としてもうすでに米の生産を減らす、畜産物の生産を減らすっていう政策を具体的に取り始めていますし、わずかに残っている価格交渉制度を解体する、それから食料自給率を向上させるっていう目標があるんですけど、国家目標があるんですけども、それも放棄するという狙いを持っています。
As preparation for TPP, the Japanese government is already starting to reduce production of grain, livestock products, sugar, and some others, while dismantling barely existing price guarantee programs and abandoning policies for raising its food self-sufficiency rate.
でその一方で野菜や果物あるいは日本の米を輸出産業として育成する。これは新しい企業に担わせる。そういうモデルであります。
And also the government says Japan will support the production of vegetables, fruits, and top quality rice as an export industry, and that is operated by agribusiness.
要するに農地の所有と利用を家族経営だけに限定してきたこれまでの農地政策を根本的に転換して企業をいわば新たな地主階級として育成する。でその企業にごく一部の農業だけを担わせる。大部分の日本の農業は放棄してしまう。そういう政策であります。
That means that the government is about to give them, large corporations, the country's remaining agricultural sector for their profit seeking.
これに合わせてTPP-FTA によって人の移動も自由化するのが狙われていますので、今現に日本にも随分東南アジアあるいは中国から農業労働者が入ってきていますけれども、それをさらに拡大するそういう狙いもあります。
And in addition, they are even aiming to force Asian farmers to be farm workers to the Japanese agribusiness by liberalizing the movement of people through Trans-Pacific Partnership and other free trade agreements.
そういうことを進める手段として日本政府は今年から小農民から土地を強制的に借り上げる制度を作ります。でスタートしています。
The Japanese government this year starts a program to take away land from small farmers possibly.
それは小農民が持っている農地を公的機関に預けさせる。でその代償に30万円から50万円、これは大体の農家の平均所得でいうと、せいぜい2ヶ月から3ヶ月分の所得ですけども、それをいわば手切れ金として渡して、で農民から農地を奪い取る、そういうプログラムです。
This is a program where public institutions borrow farmers' land possibly with a very little payment of only 3 or 2 months income. That is 300,000 yen or to 400,000 yen.
私昨日おとついとやかましの仲間から話を聞いて、例えばタイ、あるいはフィリピン、台湾でやっぱ農地の取り上げ、ランドグラビングが起こっているということを聞きました。形は違いますけども、日本でも小農民から土地を取り上げる、しかもそれが国家がやるっていうところに新しい特徴があるんだと思います。
Yesterday and before yesterday, in the meeting about that land grabbing is happening in Thailand, the Philippines, in Taiwan, but in Japan too, land grabbing is going on in a different way, which is done by the government.
その一方で日本は、こういうことになりますね。国内では小農民から政府が土地を取り上げる。その一方で海外に向かっては日本の多国籍企業が、これはアジア、ラテンアメリカの国に出てますけども、ランドグラビングを行う。そういう構図になります。
That means that in Japan, the government takes away land from farmers. At the same time, in abroad, Japanese transnational companies commit land grabbing in other countries.
中には、私の非常に大嫌いな新自由主義の評論家がいますけども、この人物は農地は輸入できるんだっていう発想で農業政策やっていくべきなんだ。例えばオーストラリアに日本用の米の水田を確保する、あるいは中国に日本用の野菜の畑を確保する、そういうふうにして農地は輸入できるんだということを言い出しています。
Some Japanese neoliberalists claims that it is possible to import land. For example, they say they can create farmland in Australia and import from there.
さっきも言いましたように、私は TPP に入れば日本の農地が 60% も潰れるんだっていう政府が試算している。でしかし、国内の農地を潰しながら海外にランドグラビングを出るなんてことは、絶対に社会正義にも、それぞれの国の食料試験にとっても許されるはずのないことだということを本当に強調したいと思います。
I would like to emphasize that the Japanese government, estimates that Japan's entry into TPP will destroy 60% of its land, and it's obvious that embarking on land grabbing while destroying domestic farmland is totally against social justice and food sovereignty.
そしてやっぱりこういう攻撃に反対して農民だけじゃなくて労働者、消費者、女性など広範な人々と共同して戦いに立ち上がっています。
So opposing this policy that denies food sovereignty and social justice, we have already started fighting against it together with all other sectors, including workers, consumers, and women.
日本は戦前は日本軍国主義がアジアを侵略して占領した。戦後はアジアにおける第一位の多国籍企業の母国として経済支配を行ってきた。そういう国であります。で、そういう日本ではありますけども、私たちは 農地改革とその後の農地制度は、私はやっぱ世界に誇ってもいいものだというふうに思っています。
During and before the World War II, Japan was responsible for the war of aggression. And then after the war, the stronghold of transnational companies in Asia, Japan inflicted a heavy sacrifice on the peoples in Asia and the Pacific. On the other hand, nevertheless, we believe that Japanese people can be proud of its agrarian land reform and the land system that the reform created.
やっぱりこういう農地制度を守り抜くことが国際連帯の一つの証だと思いますし、国際的な戦いの重要な構成部分だというふうに思っています。
And we believe that protecting our land system is a significant proof of international solidarity and important part of the world struggle.
一番最後に情報提供です。昨日までシンガポールで開かれていた TPP の閣僚会議は何も決めることができずに終わりました。次の会議をどうするか含めて何も決められないで終わりました。
Lastly, I just want to give you some tiny information that the TPP negotiations, Trans-Pacific Partnership negotiations in Singapore, just ended yesterday without any agreement, including they cannot, decide when they're going to have our next meeting.
私はやっぱりこれはアメリカとそれに従属して子分になってやってる日本、それの多国籍企業と新自由主義、こういう策動が順調に進まないんだということを示していると思います。
So this means that American and Japanese TNCs and neoliberalists cannot always do whatever they want.
幸い私たちに戦う時間はできました。グローバライズトラック、グローバライズホープ。
So we have made our time for our struggle. So let's globalize struggle and globalize hope.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. どうもありがとうございました。三島さん。I think it is a very, very exciting information that we have about the history of the land reform in Japan, which is, I think, around the World War II, right, many years ago, and then what happened in Japan that it forward through time from. I think it was a very good program that the land was distributed to farmers at the price that is affordable for them. But at the end, we are facing the same enemy, kind of neoliberalism, the land grabbing. And I found that there are several issues that the country, like a developing country, we always look at Japan as our model for development. And we found that there are some problems about food sufficiency, about family farming, which is the good source for the food that feed people right now, and then food become like a commodity, and the land grabbing is still going on, not only in Japan by the government, but the Japan company also try to do the land grabbing in other countries. And very interestingly, the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership that would destroy large of the agriculture that will create suffering for the farmers even further. And I think that I agree with Mashima-san also that land grabbing is the issue that could unite us farmers in everywhere in the world. It is a common struggle for all of us, as we summarize that we have to globalize our struggle. And I would like to invite Dr. Anusorn to present our gift, just a token of our gratitude. อาจารย์อนุสรณ์คะเชิญมอบของขวัญนิดนึงค่ะ Okay, so we are proceeding to the next session, the next program. Actually, we have some refreshment outside, but we don't really have time for that. So we would like to invite our speakers to the next panel. The next session is the panel discussion. The lesson learned from small-scale farmers' struggle for land reform in Southeast in our region. I would like to invite Mr. Liu Xinchang from TFU Taiwan Farmer Union to give us the information, share with us your experience about the lesson learned, what we should learn from from Taiwan. And perhaps we would like to 15 minutes, presentation. Okay. ทางไต้หวันต้องการจะใช้ PowerPoint นะคะรบกวนช่วย set up ด้วย PowerPoint presentation LCD เตรียม
我们的政府自中国大陆撤退时，没有带1寸的土地到台湾来，而是承接日本战败移交的土地，很多土地是日本政府强征台湾人民百姓的。
At first, we need to introduce some of the political context and political picture from Taiwan history. Our government, Chiang Kai-shek and his party, Kuomintang, come to Taiwan and become an authoritarian regime. And they escaping from China to Taiwan and without bringing any land to here, just inherit the authority from Japanese colonial empire.
后来因为笼络百姓的政策实行耕者有其田，让佃农持有他们耕作的土地，大部分人对于政府的政策没有非常的信服。
And we have the 3 series of the policy. The first is a state-owned land, which is succeeded from Japanese colonization. And we thought it's controversial to land justice because at that time the Japanese get this land from our ancestors. And the second is a land right for a peasant. At that time the government give some support in order to attain some support from our public, so he realized a land for the tiller plan. And the third is about the land readjustment. It's setting up the irrigation systems, transportation, and adjusting the farmland. So meanwhile, in this structure, our government give us very strict regulation on the farmland, that the farmland could not be easily changed or easily converted to any other use.
农业社会的时代，后来开始了农地的重划，排水、道路运输都做了一些规划，对农地的生产力、交通运输、稻谷都是很好的措施，因此有优良农地不得开发使用的。
So the second and the third one serve a lot and benefit a lot to our farmers.
但是经过了 WTO 以后，开始改变了农地的价值。政府为了配合，开始条款用补贴的方式，让大部分的农地休耕。
But in 2002, since Taiwan government joined and become one of the member. Excuse me, some problem with our reading. We repeat it again.
又有了农业发展条例的重统，对的。但是经过了 WTO 以后，开始改变了农地价值。政府为了配合 WTO 条款，用补贴的方式，让大部分的农地休耕。
Since for joining the WTO as one of the members in 2002, our government begins with serious adjustment. One is the set-aside program, meaning that government asks our farmers to stop farming and this kind of policy also encourage them to cease their farmings because this plan should why this plan be realized and practiced is because of application with the rules of WTO, and meanwhile to give some balance between the food provision and the food demand.
又有农业发展条例的纵容，任何非农民都可持有最小的面积756坪，就可以盖农舍及集村农舍。也先接了图利建商与财团，这又是另一个政策的贿赂。
The second one is the Act of Rural Development, and in this part of the land reform, people can buy the land, and if it transformed in, there are some conditions for people to buy the land. The first is you are a farmer, and the second you own the land at least 0.25 hectare, and then you can buy, and then you have the right to buy the land. But in Taiwan, so many agents comes and ask the farmer to sell this kind of land to them. So in this process, when the agent get this land, they can have a first to 0.025 hectare at first, like a small cage of a dog house, and then they can enlarge or fix the house beauty and become better.
电商开始炒作土地，也可以用1/10的土地去盖农舍。
So some circulation of land price gaining become, and the agent and the company can build a house in the farmland.
再者，以科学园区或者都市计划的名义，把大部分的优良农地消灭掉，其主因都是以资源高科技产业为主因，这就是工业回来消灭农业。
And we especially think that it serves for the complex or the land conversion in the land of high-tech development in high-tech industry development. And it causes also the disappearance of our nice or productive farmland. So this is a tricky and ridiculous picture. You will see in front of us, it is a dog cage house first. So you can occupy the land, the farmland in the middle of the farmland first, and then you can rip it out. When you get a license, you can build a beautiful house than the house behind.
这个就是因为 WTO 以后，休耕面积增加，再者就是农业发展条例造成756坪是最小的分割面积，就造成所谓的狗笼农舍。这边是豪华农舍，那个就是狗笼农舍，因为它只要2坪的土地就可以盖农舍，最后它交易以后才盖起豪宅来。
Yeah, we insist it again that it's because of the WTO. So some land reform begins like the Act of Rural Development, and we can have the 0.025 the house the mode first, like the first one, and when the customer and the agency get and have some accordance, they can build the house like the picture behind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Liu. Actually, when I first went to Taiwan, I feel really surprised that the rice field was abandoned because of the government subsidy, and asked the farmers to stop farming. You know, for me, it's a crime. To ask the farmer to stop farming is a crime, right? Very true. So I heard also that in the Philippines have a very serious land problem. So may I invite Rafael Rafael Baladat is the young man from the Philippines. He is from an organization called Paracos, which is our member. Actually, we have a senior one, a senior member from La Via Campesina in Paracos, but he is himself experiencing the land grabbing. He has in trouble with the land grabbing. So we have this young man to present us about the situation in the Philippines. Please, Paracos, Rafael.
Hello. Good morning. Yes, as Ms. Anne has said a while ago, I'm a staff from Paragos, and I'm also a farmer. We have a small plot of land 10 minutes outside of Manila. So since 1992, we have been experiencing threats from land grabbing done by landlords and large corporations aiming to develop the land we are tilling into industrial complexes, into golf courses. But more than my experience in fighting and struggling for our land, I think it is best that I show you the context of agrarian reform in the Philippines. How agrarian reform started and how land grabbing started in our country, and up to the present situation now. So I don't have any PowerPoint presentation, but I made a paper, so I'm just gonna read through it. So yes, to date, agriculture remains vital to the economic progress of the Philippines, accounting for more than 11% of the country's total GDP, and with more than 65% of its population working in rural areas. Development on the agriculture sector, however, remains beset because of the continuous problems in agrarian reform and land security for farmers. Land grabbing and agrarian reform are two tightly knit and heavily debated issues in the Philippines. Its beginnings date back to the pre-Spanish colonial period, before the 1500s, when social status, clan allegiance, and feudal warlords dictated patterns of land ownership and land use. The feudal land ownership structure, however, changed during the Spanish reign, when vast tracts of land across the country were taken from the locals and redistributed to the Spaniards according to political ties or patronage. Some 400 years into the Spanish colonization, lands were thoroughly concentrated either to the Catholic religious order or the Spanish elite who implemented the encomienda system. The encomienda system, where land and a certain number of locals were bequeathed to an encomiendero or a landlord. This is where the landlord started. Birth the master slave.
Excuse me, talks. I'm sorry, but our translators, if you could please slow down a little bit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. So, yes, during the Spanish colonial period, this is where the landlord-slave relationship began in our country. So, it became thoroughly embedded into the Philippine society up until today, in our culture, that it still exists in a number of land ownership arrangements today. After the Spanish-American War and in the 1900s, the U.S. government sought to dismantle Spanish power structures with the aim of increasing their political foothold on our country, and as well as promote democratization. Accordingly, the clamor to redistribute land amassed by the Spanish colonizers began, and the U.S. began implementing torrent titling and other several laws on land distribution, including the Homestead Act, the Prior Land Act, the Land Registration Act. However, such opportunities to own land only benefited those who are in power, the elite, the educated, and the privileged, resulting again to the concentration of the country's land to a certain few rather than land ownership equity. A number of land dispute cases at present in our country have roots from incidences of land grabbing due to the opportunities presented by the policies introduced by the Americans in the 1900s to the 1950s. So by the end of the Second World War, political and landed elites have virtually dominated all branches of the Philippine government, and this has transpired against a backdrop of peasant upheavals and rising incidences of left-wing insurgency. In our country, when you happen to talk to a communist rebel, to a member of a communist party, they would say that their struggle started because of agrarian reform. In response, the elite-dominated government implemented palliative reform programs aiming to repress but not address underlying problems causing civil unrest. Significant among the dozen of reform programs implemented by the government is the Presidential Decree number 27 under the Marcos authoritarian regime. Although primary aim on dissolving the power of Marcos's political enemies, PD 27 became a step towards the realization of an egalitarian system of land redistribution and laid the foundation for present-day agrarian reform in our country. PD 27 required the mandatory sale of all lands in excess of 7 hectares and eliminating shared tenancy, converting landholdings below 7 hectares into leaseholds, and so on. However, 15 years in its implementation, PD 27 achieved only less than 10% of its target. As the Marcos dictatorship dwindled and collapsed in the 1980s, a scramble for power ensured between communist-led groups, right-wing military factions, and the masses who demanded more democratic space. Eventually, the masses, through the People Power Revolution of 1986, triumphed and installed a known political enemy of the Marcos regime into the seat of government, the Aquinos. Benigno Aquino is the son, our present president today in our country is the son of Corazon Aquino, which was installed through People Power. So when the Aquino administration stepped into power, the fever for democracy was very high. However, it eventually faded because they failed to implement substantial reform programs to address poverty and inequality, especially in rural areas. So this is where mass protests started from farmers to implement a program that would alleviate poverty and provide them with land. So various protests were staged in the Ministry of Agrarian Reform and culminated in the Mendiola massacre, where a lot of them died. And the aftermath of the said massacre forced the Aquino administration to craft and implement the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program. And the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program, or CARP, is to date one of only a few social justice programs implemented by the Philippine government. The CARP has three components: land acquisition and distribution, agrarian dispute resolution, and support services provision. Among these components, the land acquisition and distribution component is the most plagued by challenges coming from landlords who incessantly stalled or hindered agrarian reform coverage, especially on large estates. More than 2 decades in its implementation, accomplishments for land are mostly government-owned land, not the privately owned lands under compulsory acquisition. On 2013, we have determined that 961,974 hectares of land are still left for this redistribution under the CARP. Also, insufficient support services provision leave the CARP beneficiaries to succumb to poor economic conditions in rural areas and vulnerable to local land grabbers. Like most farmers in the country, agrarian reform beneficiaries rely heavily on loans to procure farm inputs and other needs for land preparation and harvesting. In general, almost 30% of farmers' gross incomes are given to creditors, and only a mere 10% of their income are left for the survival of their families and for the amortization of their land under CARP. So this really creates an environment where the landlord can buy back the land their lands that have been distributed to the farmers, or coerce the farmers to forgo the ownership of their land because of the persistent rural poverty in our country. So, in the end, the CARP is a much-needed social justice program that promotes land asset equity and land access to marginalized farmers. Its successes, however, are trumped by the inability of the NAR to achieve its targets and to secure the rights of the farmers to their land. But despite the shortcomings and the complex problems faced by agrarian reform in the Philippines today, it is still a necessary safeguard to reduce the vulnerability of farmers and farmland to the threats of land grabbing. So, thank you, and that would be all.
I think that in many countries they have something that called Agrarian Reform Act, something like that. And it starts with a good thing, but at the end it becomes something else. Even though when I read an information about the comprehensive agrarian reform policy in the Philippines, is very impressive. Yeah, I just think that perhaps we have to fight to make it real. And we have a guest from the Palestine. I think I'm personally very excited to know that Sama will speak on the lesson learned from the Palestine, because we all know that Palestine is a very special case, that land grabbing is not just one part or another, it's just the whole country. It's not land grabbing, it's occupation. So, occupation, right? So, what are you doing with that? We want to learn from you. How the farmers set that up, right? โอเคขอความช่วยเหลือทางนี้นิดนึงค่ะเรื่องPowerPoint ตรงนี้ I think we would like to learn from you about how you deal with the situation in Palestine. Yeah, I will get a staff to help you with that presentation. Yeah, we have a lady here. Her name is Sama El Gush. From the Union of Agriculture Work Committee, a member of La Via Campesina. Actually, we are here, most of us are from Southeast and East Asia, but we are honored that we have a member in the Middle East. So far that we do not have the region of the Middle East yet, so we welcome Sama to be with us for a while, and later if the Arab region is set up, maybe we will have she would participate or attach to that region. So for the time being, I think it is good for us in the region to learn about the Palestine, your suffering, and how you struggle for the land reform. What the lesson that we in this part of the world should learn from you. Okay. And for the Thai people, I think that there is also some information about the Thai worker who also work in the occupied land of Palestine and have suffering. Perhaps in the future, we could develop cooperation between the Thai farm worker and the Palestinian farmers. So please, Sama.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to be presented among you as a new member that's coming here to hear and learn more and more from you. Since we are still new in our agrarian reform struggle, I would like to give you an introduction on the real situation in Palestine, which is related to occupation and land grabbing in general. There are key dates in the Palestinian political situation. In 1970, it's Balfour Declaration. In 1970, there was a letter from the United Kingdom Foreign Secretary Arthur James Balfour to Baron Rothschild, the leader of the British Jewish community, for transmission to the Zionist Federation of Great Britain and leaders. In 1948, a Nakba, or the disaster or catastrophe, took place, where our people, more than 726,000 Palestinians, were expelled from their homes due to the Israeli war to occupy Palestine. And Naksa, which is 1967, the day of step back when Israeli occupation took over Palestine land, which is the 6 Days War. After that, during 1987 to 1983, our first intifada or appraisal started, where Palestinian people stand against the military occupation and defended their homeland with the stones and with whatever possible means. During 2000 to 2005, our second intifada began. It's again against occupation and against land grabbing. This is the map of Palestine, how it was before starting the land grabbing by the Israeli occupation. And here you can see the 47 borders by the UN. Here, where Israel in 67 occupied the rest of Palestine. And here, in this map, you can see how shattered we are because of many checkpoints and many checkpoints and especially the wall, the concrete wall which separates the Palestinian territory from the Israel. These are pictures that should show you simply the wall. This is part of the wall which divides the Palestinian cities, where some places the families are divided between inside the wall and outside the wall. Sometimes the house itself, part of it within the wall, the other part is out. Many houses were demolished because of this. In this picture, you can see the checkpoints where you have to go through these checkpoints all over the Palestinian cities and be checked, and many times you need permissions to enter. People wait in summer and in winter, and it's so difficult even for students to manage this situation. In 1993 came Oslo Accord, which was an attempt to set up a framework that would lead to getting the rights of Palestinian people back and guarantee the right to return. And it was between the Israeli government and the Palestinian Liberation Organization. This agreement should have lasted for 5 years only, should have ended in 1998. It should be an interim period during which a permanent agreement must be accomplished. Unfortunately, this is not the case after 16 years. Then according to Oslo Accords, the Palestinian National Authority was established, which is kind of self-governance to govern the West Bank and Gaza Strip as a consequence of the Oslo Accords. In November 2012, because of the continuous land grabbing and the very slow outcomes of the peace process, the Palestinian leadership go ahead to the UN General Assembly and pass the resolution number 6719 to changing Palestinians' entity status to non-member status. There were 138 countries voting for our favor, 9 against, and who are the 9? With 41 absent. We have major problems with restriction on movement, especially on Gaza Strip. Gaza Strip, since 2007, there is a land, air, and sea blocked by Israel since 2007 up to now, especially after Hamas, which is like an Islamic party took over or won actually the Palestinian legislative elections. So they started this blockade on Gaza. The situation there is very hard because it's hard to get in construction materials, sometimes and all the times actually medicine, and also for the fishermen, it's hard to get into the water and practice their work. Okay, not to take more of your time because I think I'm running out of time. Just introduce you to major provisions that we try to provide to farmers in order at least to keep them in their land. We work on water resource development, agricultural guidance, agricultural land development, capacity building for rural women, and farmers' empowerment. In addition to provision of agricultural production inputs, especially to women cooperatives, training of agricultural engineers to develop their skills and capacity. As well, we work on creating some job creation because of the very high unemployment rate, in addition to our national seed bank. We have also worked on different national occasions in order to revive our right to land, especially on the olive harvest season, which is the most important season in Palestine and which is always being attacked by the settlers, and there's a huge danger when they are in fields, so we try to support them when harvesting their olives. Many of our international friends and delegations come and support us. The biggest support was with being part of La Via Campesina, because La Via Campesina is inspiring us with the struggle of its members, organizations, and nations. And we are so proud that and appreciate very much that you accept us within the region. will keep on the struggle for our major struggle for food sovereignty, which cannot be achieved without land sovereignty. And our major campaign within the framework of the La Via Campesina is to stand against land grabbing. Thank you so much, and thank you for the island as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Sama. I personally hope that the case of Palestine would be resolved soon, and you reclaim your country back very soon. It is my wish for you. And I really appreciate how the people who, not only just to reclaim your own country, but at the same time try to settle the livelihood of the farmers, because everything is taken away in a large scale. I could say in a very large scale. And from your presentation, I'm very impressed with the olive harvest festival. This is a good, I would say, in a very skillful mean. In the Buddhist background, I would say in a very skillful mean that you are able to create solidarity with the farmers in many parts of the world to see how you survive. So thank you very much for your presentation. And so far, we have a very good chance to listen from East Asia, from Japan and Taiwan, from Southeast Asia, that is Paraguay, and then the Middle East, that is from UAWC Palestine. Then we have two more presentations from Thailand. I think that in the meeting of the La Via Campesina, our regional meeting, we listened some of that, but I think that now we have chance to really look at the issue of what would be the lesson that we learned from you on the issue of the land reform. Perhaps we would like to invite Paul Wacharin, Mr. Wacharin Mr. Wacharin Upachong to speak to us in Thai, and then you translate. Okay, so it would be easier for our Thai friend to listen, and we are very happy that Jay would translate so that our friend from the region would understand the issue too. Would like some help on that? เชิญค่ะเจ้าหน้าที่เทคนิคสหภพครับสหภพรบกวนดูนิดนึงเราจะต้องการความช่วยเหลือ
พี่น้องทุกคนนะครับผมมาจากจังหวัดเชียงใหม่เป็นมาจากจังหวัดเชียงใหม่ในนามของสหพันธ์เกษตรกรภาคเหนือนะครับได้มีการรณรงค์มีการมีการร่วมต่อสู้กับพี่น้องเจ้าให้เจ้านามาตลอดนับตั้งแต่หลายปีมาแล้วเมื่อปี1996 ตุลามาจนถึงปัจจุบันตอนนั้นในนามของสหพันธ์เจ้านาเจ้าให้ภาคเหนือ
So good morning to all my brothers and sisters here today. My name is Mr. Wacharin, and I am from Chiang Mai province, representing NPF. And we have been struggling for land rights for many years, for over 20 years in this struggle.
หลังจากที่เรามีการเคลื่อนไหวต่อสู้ร่วมกับพี่น้องชาวบ้านชาวไร่ชาวนามาตลอดถามว่าการแก้ไขปัญหาผลสำเร็จก็มีเลยนะครับน้อยนักที่จะได้รับการตอบสนองจากรัฐบาลหรือว่าจากสังคมวิตกพี่น้องครับเอาจะหันได้ว่าโดยทั่วไปประเทศไทยเรา มีทั้งหมด300สาวทั่วประเทศ300สาวทั่วประเทศ300สาวล้านไร่ทั่วประเทศครับเป็นป่าที่อยู่ในเขตป่านะครับที่อยู่ในเขตป่า82 ล้านไร่นะครับดังนั้นเนี่ยมีน้ำกว่า28 ล้านไร่ครับแล้วก็มีส่วนของเอกชนนะครับของเอกชนมีอยู่130 ล้านไร่ทั่วประเทศดังนั้นเนี่ยปัญหาของเกษตรกรเนี่ยซึ่งมีที่ทำกิจอยู่ประมาณ82 ล้านไร่มันมีที่ไหนบ้างที่ดินที่มีเอกสารสิทธิ์
So in Thailand, as the map shows, the issue is that there is enough land for the people in Thailand if it was distributed fairly and equally. But right now, most of the land that the farmers in the north are fighting about is the reserve forest land of 13.5 million hectares.
ที่ดินที่มีเอกสารสิทธิ์นะครับมีประมาณ30 ล้านไร่ที่ถูกปล่อยทิ้งล้างมาได้ทำประโยชน์นะครับมี30 ล้านไร่ทั่วประเทศที่ปล่อยทิ้งล้างไว้แล้วมาได้ทำประโยชน์อย่างนี้ซึ่งจุดนี้ทำให้เสียมูลค่าทางเศรษฐกิจเป็นอย่างสูงนะครับ
So over 4.75 million hectares of titled private lands are not being used, or they're being underused, and the production from these lands is not being it's not the full potential that could be used.
เกษตรกรอย่างน้อยนะครับ48 ล้าน4.8 ล้านครอบครัวมีที่ดินที่ประกอบที่ดินน้อยนะครับที่ดินเนี่ยเฉลี่ยแค่คนให้กา2ให้กาซึ่งอยู่ทั่วประเทศมีเกษตรกรอย่างน้อย 4.8 ล้านครอบครัวซึ่งที่ดินประกอบ
And about 4.8 million small-scale farmers, their land is not enough to support their families.
ส่วนที่ดินในเมืองถูกเปลี่ยนไปนะครับเปลี่ยนการใช้ที่นากลายเป็นที่บ้านจัดสรรโรงงานต่างๆเกินเลยนะครับที่ดินในเมืองซึ่งเป็นที่ดินที่เหมาะสมในการทำการเกษตรเหมาะสมในเชิงการเกษตรโดยตรงซึ่งมีระบบน้ำชลประทานดีเยี่ยมแต่เป็นจะได้ครับปัญหามูนี้ถูกละเลยหรือว่าเป็นปัญหาระดับโครงสร้างเพราะว่าที่ดินเปลี่ยนมือไปอย่างเดียว
And this land, there is some very fertile land, very good land near the cities that could be used to produce a lot of food. But now all of that land is being used for things like factories and housing estates, even though it has good water and the soil is fertile. So this is a waste of the land, we think.
ส่วนในที่ป่าและเป็นที่ดินของรัฐซึ่งมีจำนวนมากครับที่คนจนจำนวนกว่า15 ล้านคนต้องอยู่อาศัยในที่ดินที่ผิดกฎหมายที่ดินเหล่านี้ซึ่งชาวบ้านแม้แต่ผมเองเข้าไปอยู่ผิดกฎหมายเขาบอกหู้เจียงได้เขาต้องจำเป็นอยู่เพื่อดำรงชีพดำรงทำอาหารของเขานะครับเนี่ยคือพื้นที่ที่อยู่ในเขตป่านะครับ ดยเฉพาะเรื่องการเป็นอยู่การทำอาหารกินเขาบางครั้งเนี่ยเขาเข้าไปในป่าก็ถูกเจ้าหน้าที่ป่าไม้เข้ามาจับกุมเนี่ยนี่คือผลพวงจากการปฏิรูปที่ดินและก็มีการเข้าไปยึดครองที่ดินแต่ว่าอันนี้คือเรื่องราวเนี่ยมันเกิดขึ้นมาตลอดซึ่งมันอัดอั้นตันใจมากนักเลยนะครับว่าเป็นจะได้ว่าคนไทยแท้ๆแล้วเป็นจะได้ว่าต้องเปลี่ยนที่ดินจากในเมืองเนี่ยกลายเป็นบ้านจัดสรรเป็นที่ดินที่นาตัวขนาดเดียวกับไปอยู่ในป่าหมู่เฮาไปอยู่ในป่าอยู่ที่บะหมี่กระพบชนประทานนี่มันครับสารพัดเลยนะครับ ถามว่าเจ้าบ้านคนจนที่มีลูกมีหลานที่เติบใหญ่ขึ้นมาต้องมีปัญหามาตลอดดังนั้นมันมีปัญหาทางสังคมโดยวันนี้อย่าไปลืมว่ามันกระทบทางสังคมมันได้ไปเกี่ยวข้องกับเรื่องอย่างนี้นะครับเศรษฐกิจสังคมมันเกี่ยวข้องกันหมดซึ่งหมู่เฮาต้องจำใจอยู่
And as this says, for Mr. Wacharin, he is in one of these communities living in the forest, and his whole community has no legal recognition or documentation. So where they live is technically illegal, and then if they try to go out of their houses to grow the vegetables or to get forest products, they are at risk of being arrested because all of this land on the paper belongs to the state. So this is an ongoing problem. It's a problem that affects all parts of Thai society, and it is an economic and a social problem. And you need to think about all of those things, the economics and the social issues together when you try to talk about the issues of the land.
หลังจากนั้นคนนำบทส่วนหนึ่งเกิดไหลส่วนของวัดโลกไหลเข้าไปอยู่ในเมืองพ่อนะครับเพราะอย่างเพราะเข้าไปอยู่ในที่ดินที่บัดสามารถเข้าถึงที่ดินที่ดินที่รับรกร้างว่างเปล่าในเมืองเลยนะครับโดยคนจนเนี่ยก็เลยต้องอพยพจากชนบทเข้าสู่เมืองครับจึงไปจับจองที่ดินรกร้างในเมืองที่มันว่างเปล่าอาศัยเป็นชุมชนแออัดคนบ้านนอกนะครับผมรู้ยังไงเข้าป่าไปโดนจับบางคนก็ต้องหนีเข้าในเมืองบางคนต้องมาปิดกรรมกรต้องมาขายแรงงานโรงงานอุตสาหกรรมหน้าที่เขาจะได้ทำการเกษตรที่เหมาะสมนี่มาอยู่ในเมืองเป็นชุมชนแอร์ทั่วประเทศมากกว่า 3,000 กว่านี่คือมันอย่างไรผมพูดนะเพราะว่าประเทศไทยเขาเนี่ยคนบอกว่าปกครองระบอบประชาธิปไตยก็จริงแต่มันเป็นประชาธิปไตยที่อาจจะเหลื่อมล้ำกันแต่เขายอมรับว่าประชาธิปไตยต้องเป็นเรื่องที่ดีกับชาวบ้านแต่ประชาธิปไตยแท้มันเป็นไรว่ามันยังบัดมีเข้าถึงกับคนจนแท้พ่ออันนี้คือเขาต้องเรียกร้องนี่คือคนจนต้องการเข้าสู่กายชุมชนเนี่ยเป็นชาวบ้านทุกคน
So like this shows, we talked on the last slide, sometimes if the people go outside their houses, they can get arrested. So they don't know what to do to make a living. So many of them come to the cities because they know they can find the work to make the money. And when they get to the cities, it's a very difficult life. They must live in communities in very bad conditions and without a lot of comforts. So this is a big problem. And he was talking about democracy, and now in Thailand there's a lot of talk about democracy, but his question is, when you use the word democracy, who is the democracy for? Is it for everyone? If the democracy is for everyone, especially the poor people, then why are these systems and why are these things happening which are making the life of the poor people worse and worse?
ปัจจุบันนี้นะครับการทำการเกษตรบางครั้งเนี่ยเราจะพุ่มนโยบายจะพุ่มทางพืชเศรษฐกิจเป็นหลักครับทางเศรษฐกิจนะเพราะว่าข้าวโพดยางพาราพวกนี้ก็คือมีการปลูกที่ด้วยคือมันแย่งที่ระหว่างคนโจทย์ครับอาชีพหลักของที่เราจะทำไปมันเป็นไปมันบอกงูยังไงอ่ะเพราะว่าในนโยบายทางรัฐบาลต้องการหาเงินให้นักก่อนถ้ามีเงินมาปุ๊บมันเขาจะดีขึ้นเนี่ยคือลักษณะนี้นั่นคือทำการปลูกพืชเชิงเดียวนะครับปลูกพืชเชิงเดียวนั่นมันต้นล้นหลามนักขึ้นเลยเกิดหาขึ้นมานะครับในการปลูกที่
And as this shows, this is the big problem now because the government policies are forcing the farmers, if they want to have incomes to support their family, the economic policies are supporting the monoculture, especially the corn and the rubber in the north. So even though the farmers maybe don't want to do this, the way the system is, this seems to be their only way out, their only way to make a living. So this is the situation, especially in the north, for corn and rubber.
ส่วนชาวบ้านที่อยู่ในเขตป่าเป็นได้พ่อโดนจับกุมนะครับโดนจับกุมมาตลอดทุกครั้งถามว่าวันนี้อยู่ที่ดินในเขตป่าซึ่งอยู่ในเขตอุทยานอยู่ในเขตป่าไม้แต่ถ้ามันก็ต่อสู้กันเพราะชาวบ้านเนี่ยบางครั้งชาวบ้านก็เคยไปอยู่ก่อนแล้วป่าไม้มาทับทีหลังหรือที่ป่ามาทับทีหลังนะครับโดยชาวบ้านเนี่ยเลยถูกโดนจับกุมดำเนินคดีอาญาโดนคดีอาญาโดนคดีความคดีโลกร้อนคนว่าอย่างนี้เนี่ยนี่คือโดนข้อหาครับอยู่ในป่าโดนว่าการจับกุมเนี่ยอย่างเช่นของคดีของลุงพัตตีอิแปะโพนะครับซึ่งอยู่ที่จังหวัดตากถูกอัยการฟ้องข้อหาบุกรุกป่าสงวนพี่น้องผมคิดดูไปอยู่ที่ดินของพวกเขามาเมินแล้วนะครับว่าโดนฟ้องข้อหาบุกรุกป่าสงวนซึ่งเป็นคดีที่มันนอมแนมอ่ะแต่กฎหมายมันแบบใจคิดอย่างเฮาอ่ะครับค่าเสียหายมันคิดก็ได้3 ล้านปลายครับ3 ล้านปลายนะครับก็พัตตีที่แปะโพคนนี้นะครับโดนเรื่องนี้
So as he mentioned earlier about the people being arrested in the forest, most of the communities in those forests were living there before the government declared them to be National Forest Reserve. So this is the big problem. The people say, we lived here before and later you set the zone up. So how can you do this? This is our land. This is our home. And this is one example. Now there's hundreds of cases like this. You can see this is 80-year-old man, and the court case, the amount of penalty is so high, so it's almost ridiculous compared to how much money this man has. More than 3 million baht for damages. and this man in a year makes hundreds or maybe thousands of baht. So the penalties they are giving are not appropriate fines or penalties for the people. And we like to make the joke about beware dangerous criminal, because as you can see, this is not a dangerous man. But for a fine of 3 million baht, you must think it should be a dangerous person.
นี่ภาคใต้ที่จังหวัดสุราษฎร์ธานีเมื่อ2 ปีที่แล้วนะครับจะโดนยิงพี่น้องโดนไม่ยิงเลยนะครับไม่ยิงก็ตายก็จับยกข้อหาตอนนี้โดนยิงโดยนายทุนที่อยู่นั่นเข้าไปทำร้ายชาวบ้านคนทุกคนจนจบนี่คือทางภาคใต้ที่ตัวอย่างนะครับภาคแต่ถ้าเกิดโดนคดีแต่ภาคใต้อาจจะมีความรุนแรงกว่า
And in the north, this is happening a lot. But we just wanted to share some information from our networks in the south. So the picture on the right is southern Thailand. And these were 2 women leaders in a community that was accused of encroaching on a rubber plantation land. So the rubber plantation is owned by very powerful businesses and companies. So they have hitmen, they have mafia people, and in daylight, they murdered these 2 women on the way to the market 2 years ago in Surat Thani province in southern Thailand.
บทเรียนการสูญเสียที่ดินของเกษตรกรที่ผ่านมาหลังจากที่ดินที่มีเอกสารสิทธิ์เอามาขึ้นออกหลังจากที่มีที่ดินมีสิทธิทุกอย่างเอาไปทำการผลิตการเกษตรพี่น้องคนจนบางคนบางท่านก็มีต้องเอาไปจำนองนะครับจำนองแล้วเพื่อจะได้เงินเพื่อให้มีราคานักขึ้นอันนี้คือที่ดินในกรรมสิทธิ์ของบุคคลหรือว่าปัจเจกเอกสารสิทธิ์หลังจากได้ที่ดินปุ๊บผมจะได้เอาไปลงทุนคือไปขายไปจำนองหลังจากนั้นมาปุ๊บขายก็ได้ขายผลผลิตมาได้ผลผลิตมันแพงราคาแพงต้นทุนมันสูงที่ดินก็ถูกรุดมือที่ดินรุดมือบะมีที่ดินทำกินมูนี้เรื่องบะงูจะไปที่ไหนส่วนหนึ่งบุกป่าอย่างที่คุณตะกี้ส่วนหนึ่งหนีเข้าในเมืองซ่อหาที่ดินรกร้างของคนรวยคนที่พอมีฐานะอันเป็นกิจแต่ละไว้พอบุกป่าเพิ่มมันมีอย่างครับเนี่ยคือเป็นกรรมสิทธิ์ที่ดินปัจเจกบุคคลที่มันรุดมือไปโดยง่ายได้ขนาดยังคือเจ้าบ้านต้องวนเวียนอยู่มันจะเป็นวัฏจักรตลอดเลยถ้าหากเขามีที่ดินเป็นเอกปัจเจกแล้วถ้าหากมันมีการทำการผลิตที่ดีพอหรืออาจจะเป็นการผลิตที่เชิงเดียวเข้าไปมันก็จะมีปัญหาดังนั้นวันนี้เราจะต้องคิดถึงความมั่นคงทางอาหารของตัวเก่าคิดถึงความดีความถูกต้องของตัวเก่านี่คือบทเรียนการฝึกที่ดี
So yes, this in the north we've analyzed. The farmers have sat and analyzed what has happened, and this is what they think it's like a cycle. The land titles are issued, but most of the farmers sell them to get the money very quickly or use for collateral for loans. And then they lose the land, and then they must go to state land or private land to try to get more land to farm. And it's just causing the problem to keep going in a cycle. So we'll just spend a few minutes to talk about one way we try to stop this cycle.
หลังจากที่หมู่เฮาต่อสู้มาตลอดต่อสู้เรื่องที่ดินมาตลอดเราเลยคิดค้นกันว่าแนวคิดของเราเนี่ยเราจะยึดจะได้ดังนั้นสหพันธ์เกษตรกรภาคเหนือซึ่งอยู่ภายใต้องค์กรของพี่น้องเวียผมมีแนวคิดอย่างนี้ว่าโฉนดชุมชนเนี่ยเขาจะยึดจะได้จะทำเพื่อใดมันถูกต้องแนวคิดโฉนดชุมชนเนี่ยชุมชนเป็นเจ้าของกรรมสิทธิ์สิทธิการได้ประโยชน์เป็นของบุคคลชุมชนเป็นกรรมสิทธิ์นะครับโฉนดชุมชนนะครับแต่สิทธิในการใช้ที่ดินนั้นเป็นของส่วนบุคคลแล้วฝ่ายปกครองสืบทอดมรดกให้กับลูกหลานนี่แนวคิดคำว่าโฉนดชุมชนมันจะไปแบบปัจเจกนะครับถ้าเป็นโฉนดตาคุดกาสปกกานสสามนั่นเป็นอย่างนะครับอาจจะเป็นแนวคิดของหมู่เฮานะครับและห้ามขายที่ดินให้กับคนนอกชุมชนฝ่ายปกครองข้อต่อไปสมาชิกทุกคนต้องใช้ประโยชน์ในที่ดินเขาจะต้องใช้ที่ดินอย่างต่อเนื่องการเป็นมือที่ดินทุกแปลงต้องผ่านตามมติคณะนี่คือแนวคิดของหมู่เฮาแนวคิดของคำว่าโฉนดชุมชนที่หมู่เฮาคิดค้นขึ้นมาน่าจะมาจากกับหมู่เฮาได้
So yes, this is today we're talking about land reform, and the government in Thailand has had some land reform policies in the past, and the forestry department has some other policies where they try to solve the issues. But in the north, we have seen many problems about those kind of programs. So we have decided the best way to stop what is happening, the problem with the land, is to do this community-based land management. And the main point about this, because some people are confused, is that the total land belongs to the community, but within the community, individuals are allowed to have plots and make decisions about what they will grow and what they will use their plots for. The main difference between this and the current system is that if they want to sell their plot, they need approval from the community land committee in the community. So they cannot just sell to anyone they want from outside. They need to have decision by the community if they approve to sell this to the outside. This is the main idea, to try to keep the land in the community and have them be responsible.
หลังจากที่เขาคิดว่ามีแนวคิดการจัดการที่ดินในแนวของโฉนดชุมชนทั้งนี้นั่นก็คือถ้าเขาทำได้เขาเตรียมตัวที่จะออกกฎหมายคือรัฐสภานั่นคือกฎหมาย4ฉบับครับกฎหมาย4ฉบับเพื่อจะออกมาจัดการแก้ไขปัญหาของหมู่เฮา4ฉบับนะครับมีอย่างพ้องนะครับ4ฉบับนี้มันก็มีพรบสิทธิชุมชนในการจัดที่ดินและทรัพยากรธรรมชาตินะครับหรือว่าโฉนดชุมชนนั่นแหละครับอันนี้คือพรบสิทธิชุมชนนะครับข้อ2นั่นคือพรบธนาคารที่ดินนะครับข้อ3เนี่ยภาษีที่ดินในอัตราก้าวหน้าคืออัตราก้าวหน้านี้นั่นคือเขาจะเอาภาษีเนี่ยออกมาจ่ายให้กับพี่น้องประชาชนทั่วไปประชาชนทุกคนจะเข้าถึงที่ดินได้ทุกคนแม้แต่คนชั้นกลางนะครับมีสิทธิ์ที่จะได้ที่ดินนั้นโดยคนในเมืองก็จะมีสิทธิ์นั้นได้โดยนะครับแล้วผลสุดท้ายข้อสุดท้ายก็คือพรบกองทุนยุติธรรมที่3ฉบับ4ฉบับเนี่ยเขาจะรณรงค์นะครับรณรงค์เพื่อให้กับมีกฎหมายตัวนี้ให้ได้นะครับอันนี้คือเป็นแนวคิดของเรา
And the last thing he just wanted to share was that now the community land title is part of this first initiative, first law, and there are 3 other laws that we are working to try to get passed in the Thai Parliament, which we think will contribute to stopping this vicious land problem that Thailand faces. So the last point is that in the past we called this 4 laws for the poor, but then we came back and started talking and we said actually it's not a good name because the people who this will help is not just the poor. This is helpful for everyone in Thailand. So we put the new fixing on there 4 laws for the people to try to help Thai people everywhere understand it's not just about the poor people. This is about all Thai people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it is a good proposal that for the people, for the poor, for the farmers themselves, we get together and try to propose our way to solve the problem, not only just wait for the government to say something to us. And for the last presentation, Assembly of the Poor, สมัชชาคนจน so Samacha Konjono Assembly of the Poor is a member of La Via Campesina in the region, and we are very happy that we have a chance to host the regional meeting. So the host would come at the last. So Mr. Paitun from Assembly of the Poor will make the last presentation about what are the lessons learned from the struggle of the AOP for over 20 years for the land issue. So what the small-scale farmers learned from that and what would be the lesson that we share with you.
ขอสวัสดีทุกท่านที่อยู่ในห้องประชุมนะครับคือ PowerPoint อาจจะไม่ได้ใช้นะครับเพราะว่าดูจากทางของสกน.แล้วก็ภาพรวมก็เนื้อหาหลักในส่วนหลักก็คงไม่ต่างกันเท่าไหร่แต่ว่าในส่วนของผมคงจะเป็นประสบการณ์การต่อสู้ของเกษตรกรรายย่อยในระดับพื้นที่อาจจะโพสต์ลงมาให้เห็นภาพในจุดเล็กๆนะครับ
This Paitun said that actually we do not we are not going to show you the PowerPoint presentation because the analysis at the national level is similar to the one that NPF that present to you, but the presentation of AOP will focus at the community level, which is in the smaller scale.
ครับแต่ในส่วนของการต่อสู้ในพื้นที่ของผมเนี่ยอาจจะมีเป็นอีกมุมหนึ่งแตกต่างจากทางสกน.ก็คือมันจะมีเรื่องของนโยบายความมั่นคงหรือคือมีทหารเข้ามาเป็นส่วนเกี่ยวข้องนะครับ
And the experience at the field at the community level might have some differences from the struggle of NPF because some of our experience have involved the policy, the national security policy.
คือเริ่มแรกในหมู่บ้านของผมเองเนี่ยเคยมีที่ดินทำกินแต่ว่าถูกอพยพออกจากที่ดินทำกินเดิมด้วยเหตุความมั่นคงทางการเมืองหรือว่ามีการต่อสู้กันระหว่างรัฐบาลไทยกับพรรคคอมมิวนิสต์แห่งประเทศไทยซึ่งพื้นที่อยู่ที่ชายแดนไทยกัมพูชาอยู่ที่บุรีรัมย์
Paitun comes from a village near the Thai and Cambodian border in Buriram province. And previously, people in his village or his villagers, everyone has land, but people were removed, moved out from the land because due to the policy of the Thai army in the period that they were fighting with the Communist Party.
แต่ละพอเหตุการณ์ทางการเมืองระหว่างรัฐบาลไทยกับพรรคคอมมิวนิสต์ได้เริ่มสงบลงแต่ว่าพื้นที่ที่เคยเป็นที่ทำกินเดิมของพวกเราเนี่ยก็กลับถูกทางกรมป่าไม้นำไปสัมปทานให้กับบริษัทเอกชนในการเช่าปลูกไม้เพื่อที่จะนำไปทำกระดาษ
After the war between the Thai government and the Communist Party finished, the land which is taken over or by the Thai army were not returned to the villagers, but the land was transferred to the forestry department. And what the forestry department did with the land is to give it as a concession or franchise to a company for the company to rent the land in order to grow some trees that they're going to make a paper. That's eucalyptus. That is eucalyptus tree for paper making.
ซึ่งระยะเวลาในการให้สัมปทานนั้นก็มีตั้งแต่15ปีถึง30ปี
And the concession or the franchise that the forestry department gave to the company is some time between 15 to 30 years.
ซึ่งระหว่างนั้นเองชาวบ้านส่วนหนึ่งก็ได้รับการจัดสรรที่ดินให้ทำกินแต่ว่ามันอยู่ในสัดส่วนที่น้อยแล้วก็ส่วนที่สองก็คือว่าไม่ได้รับการจัดสรรอย่างทั่วถึง
Even though the government tried to help, some of them just a small number of them got the land allocated for them, but the land is very small plot and not everyone got allocated.
คือมันก็ไม่พอกินทีนี้ในช่วงประมาณปี 2546 สัญญาของบริษัทเอกชนก็ได้สิ้นสุดลงซึ่งชาวบ้านที่เราเป็นเจ้าของที่ดินทำกินเดิมก็ได้เข้าไปในที่ดินทำกินเดิมเพื่อที่จะผลักดันให้รัฐเนี่ยนำที่ดินเหล่านั้นเนี่ยเอามาคืนให้กับเรา
Okay. So the problem is that the land is too small for them to sufficiently support themselves or to agriculture. So around 11 years ago, the concession period was over. So the villagers decided to seize the land back in order to force the government to solve their problem, to attend to their problem.
ดังนั้นเองพอดีขอย้อนกลับไปเรื่องคำว่าจัดสรรเมื่อกี้ว่าจริงๆแล้วเนี่ยมันไม่ใช่การปฏิรูปที่ดินในสังคมไทยแต่เป็นการให้เป็นคล้ายๆกับเป็นการตอบแทนชาวบ้านที่อยู่ตามแนวชายแดนเพื่อความมั่นคง
Okay. He would like to go back a little bit when the time that the Thai army took their land and the government tried to help the villagers by giving them some small part of land. He said that it is not a land reform it is not a land reform at all. It is just a gift or something that the government just want to say thank you that you allow us to take the whole plot of your land and we give you just a small land as a token of gratitude or something like this. Yes.
ซึ่งหลังจากนั้นมาก็สิ่งที่เราค้นพบก็คือว่าในการที่ชาวบ้านที่ลุกขึ้นมาต่อสู้หรือว่ามาทวงถามสิทธิตัวเองคืนเนี่ยมันก็ได้ถูกระบบของราชการของรัฐบาลแล้วก็ของนายทุนเนี่ยเข้ามาจัดการ
From the farmers' experience, the villagers have to stand up for their own right to reclaim their land. But when they do so, what they are facing is the bureaucratic system and also the capitalist people.
ที่เห็นได้ชัดเจนก็มีอยู่2ส่วนก็คือ1เนี่ยก็จะใช้กระบวนการทางกฎหมายก็คือจับกุมดำเนินคดีอันที่2ก็คือการคุกคามในรูปแบบที่นอกกฎหมายก็คืออาจจะมีปืนขู่
So the government or the state, the bureaucratic, the state and the capitalists, what they do to the people, they use two things. One is they use law to arrest them and to kind of criminalize them. This is one thing, and another thing is just a threat that by using violence to threaten.
อย่างผมเองก็ถูกศาลตัดสินในข้อหาบุกรุกป่าสงวนตัดสินจำคุก4 เดือน 15 วันแต่ว่าโทษให้รอลงอาญา
For Paitun himself, he got a sentence for kind of a 4-month imprisoned, but his charge is still waiting.
ซึ่งสรุปแล้วก็คือว่าในส่วนของรัฐเองเนี่ยพยายามที่จะใช้กระบวนการต่างๆในการที่จะทำให้ชาวบ้านเนี่ยไม่กล้าที่จะลุกขึ้นมาต่อสู้หรือว่าไม่กล้าที่จะลุกขึ้นมาผลักดันให้รัฐเนี่ยจัดหาที่ดินให้กับชาวบ้าน
So finally he understands that it is the state's effort to use all means to discourage people to stand up for their right to demand the government to allocate the land for them.
แต่ว่าถึงอย่างไรเราเองก็คงไม่ได้มีทางเลือกมากนักนะครับก็คงจำเป็นต้องดิ้นรนอย่างที่เรามารวมกับเป็นสมาชิกของสมัชชาคนเป็นเนี่ยก็เพื่อที่จะรวมกลุ่มคนเล็กคนน้อยให้มันมีพลังให้มีอำนาจในการต่อรองกับรัฐบาลให้มากขึ้น
But the people in the village, they don't have many options, many ways to struggle. So they have to continue their struggle. And one way to react to the situation is to join with Assembly of the Poor to be stronger in number. So if we have combined the strength of small people, we would be able to pressure for the government.
ซึ่งผลก็คือจนทุกวันนี้เราเองก็ยังสามารถที่จะยืนอยู่ในพื้นที่ได้ยังสามารถที่จะทำการผลิตจากพื้นที่ที่เราเข้าไปทวงถามคืนได้
And because of our participation with Assembly of the Poor, the result is that we are still able to maintain our stance. We are still able to stay in our land. And I would say to occupy their own land or to seize their own land and still able to produce.
ซึ่งพื้นที่ของผมจริงก็จะอยู่ติดกันกับบ้านพวกอีโดยที่เราจะไปดูงานกันในวันพรุ่งนี้แล้วก็คือสภาพทางภูมิศาสตร์ทางเรื่องราวของการต่อสู้ก็คงไม่ต่างจากทางผู้อีโดยเท่าไหร่
And with his village is called Kao Bat. It is Kao Bat. Actually, it is very Kao Bat. Okay, Kao Bat is very. It is near to Kok Idoi community that we are going to visit. Tomorrow, you will see that the geographical character is the same, and the struggle of the people is the same.
ซึ่งสำคัญสุดเลยก็คือว่าถ้าหากประเทศไทยเนี่ยได้มีการปฏิรูปที่ดินหรือว่าจัดที่ดินกันอย่างจริงจังหรือเป็นรูปธรรมเนี่ยเหตุการณ์อย่างผมก็คงจะไม่เกิดขึ้น
And he said that if our country Thailand really have a genuine land reform law, the cases or the troubles like the one that you're facing would never happen.
จริงๆแล้วรัฐบาลไทยเองก็มีกฎหมายที่เกี่ยวข้องกับการปฏิรูปที่ดินเนี่ยหลายฉบับแต่ว่าผมไม่แน่ใจว่ามันมีสักฉบับไหมที่มันสามารถปฏิบัติได้จริง
In fact, in our country Thailand, we have a lot of law related to land reform, but he wonder whether we have just a single one that really be implemented. We'd like to end his presentation right here. Okay, thank you very much. And now we still have some time for after you listen to all the presentation, all the lesson learned from many countries around the region. I would like to open the floor if you have questions or clarification, if you want to learn more, if there is any information missing, please. We have around 20 minutes here. more comments, or if you feel that in your country you have some.
Thank you for the time, sir. Thanks for the college from the region. You are already sharing a lot of experience about the land reform in your country, its region in the country. So, as you know, that Timor-Leste also just got a freedom for 10 years now, become to own government. So before we have 450 years colonized by Portuguese, and then 25 years is occupation by Indonesian army. So we have two systems in that. We have about the land is now we struggle for. We have drafted proposal to submit to the parliament, but until now they still keep in the parliament in ongoing on discussion, because the law, which law we drafted and we give to them, support propose to them is contradicts with what they politician mind. So we have two certificates in that. The first certificate is from Portuguese. It's only king and then who is army, ex-army, they have a certificate, but not for the normal community or farmer. So even their coffee plantation or their rice field, it's even that is their private land, but they have not received any certificate from the government. The second one in the Indonesian occupation is Indonesian give also the certificate is become like just force the community to give the land to army. So that is the situation in the colonialism side. So now what we struggle for in Timor-Leste is we have create the proposal of law for the land law, and then we submit it to the parliament. Then the main of the law is we struggle for the not validation the law certificate from the past, from the colonialism time. That is number one, and then we get answer from the leader of politics in Timor-Leste is some 50% of them is agree for that, because the first government is win majority of the one government is the name Fretilin, is friend of this left party, and then now it's become CNRT as like center right ideology, and then now they just like what is mean they cancel it, not continue to discuss it the law in the parliament. So this is the one thing. The big land in Timor-Leste is only king, and then who is ex-army for the Portuguese and then Indonesian time. So what we approach now is we use the local, cultural or traditional, because our history is about 500 years ago. The land, we not just sell the land, but we do the land as a part of the cultural system. For example, if someone man or someone want to get married with some girl in the one village, he come to that is part of the we call it part of bellies or something for the like to apa? Mas kawin itu apa? Yes, something like gift.
Dowry.
The dowry, yeah. So like that. So when we have two system. In the part of the lowland or flat area, is we call it fehan. That is maternity, what is called is the woman is have right to own the land. But in the part of the hilly upland, highland, it's only men have right to own land. But when in this proposal of land law we just submit last 2010, is we include that. So we need to take some positive thinking from the traditional or cultural. From the highland also, and then from the lowland also. There's two system of the traditional. So the one I want to say here is Australian guys before his grandparents is stayed there, and they occupied about 1,000 of hectare of the coffee in one district named Mermera. So now we have win that in the discussion till the tribunal. We win that coffee plantation and we give back to the community. So it's only used strategic of the cultural system. If you come from outside country, even you are your mom or your daddy is from the country, but the first question we will ask it's where is your cultural home? Cultural home. So if he say that, if he or her say that my cultural home from this region and the name like this, and we will ask that well the Spanish, what something you put in there to say your name before you grandmother or grandfather come to take or married with our grand family. So that is one like symbol you should put in our cultural home. If not, you not have right to have the land in my country.
Oh,
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting. And all friends from Myanmar, so far Myanmar is not a member of La Via Campesina yet, but we see that Myanmar is an agricultural country. A lot of farmers are suffering there. So we invite them to be a part of our meeting and also part of this forum. And Susu, would you like to share about your situation and the lesson learned, how the farmers there struggle for the land? Please.
Thank you very much, PM, giving me chance to speak here to present about the farmer problem. Okay, I will not take more than 10. 5, okay. Actually, as you know, Burma's independence since 1998. After that, since 1996, militarization. And 2008, there is a constitution drawn by the military government constitution, in which is protest for the militarization or military government. The previous government that they have done for like crimes by the military. In 2010, there is a fake election done by the military, a current ruling government. And 2011, there is a by-election, and San Suu Kyi also entered in the parliament by passing election. And there is also land grabbing is also like a nationwide problem since since the militarization since 1996. But we will talk about only focus on before 1990. And then there's land confiscated by the government, the military government, 1990 to expand their military camp in pooling camps. And then there are also some, this is the process of the land confiscation. The military government invite a lot of foreign investment, which is not ready yet for the people. And then they have a hydropower project, also oil refinery industrial zone, special economic zone in near Rango, which is a Tilawa special economic zone. investment by the Japanese government in JICA company. And also there is a one special economic zone in the way, which is in investment by the Italian Thai company. And then a lot of land confiscation problem there. And then they have also relocation camp, which is a very low standard. In rule law also, always lost by the farmer, even though they assume they face lawsuit, even though they went to the law court. And the people, if they want to demonstrate, they have to ask permission from the government. The point is, the government confiscated land, and then they have to ask a permission from the government. As long as they don't allow to make a demonstration, people cannot gather more than 5 people. And then that is ruling government land confiscated in within their ruling government party. This is in 2010. There is 2030 like a current land confiscation that they are continues on. They return some area, they return to the original owner, but in the way they hand over to the crony who are very close with them. Also, some authority also involved in land confiscation and then like a city, modern city zone. These are farmer. The previous year, this one is current. The land also already make road access. This is the authority order the landowner to move out, and then they forced to sign, but which is a compensation is a very low amount of the money with the current situation. So we still have to do a lot more about the advocacy. Then we have to organize like a parliamentary advocacy for the land rights, but not success. So people cannot gather more than 10 people. So they gather as a religion reason to play together, and then also they have a meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Susu. We are now at the last session, at the last minutes of our forum here. I'd like to take a few minutes to kind of summarize what we have discussed so far. My own observation is that in Asia, agriculture is still a dominant sector, the significant economic sector, but our members in the countries in the region are still different. We have different systems. We have countries that are still very kind of feudalist, like in the Philippines, a large landlord. East Timor also a lot of kind of the leftover or the past of the feudalist past. And we have countries is quite developed like Korea and Taiwan and Japan, and yet we still have the land problems, the land grabbing problems. And I also observe that land should belong to farmers, the one who till on it. Land is critical for farmers, and by my personal view is that anything that make farmers unable to produce is a crime to humanity, because land is something is very critical factor for food sovereignty and also social justice. And I feel that many countries has the land reform, or at least they show some kind of lip service on the land reform. But so far from my observation, there's very little participation or voices of the farmers in the process of land reform. So I think this is one thing that we should consider. And number two from my observation is that perhaps when we talk about land reform, there should have been a kind of diverse, not only just one homogeneous instant land reform. It's not an instant coffee, or it's not like an instant noodle, just put hot water and that's it. It is not so. It should be some kind of diverse also. I learned something like, as Almerido said, the customary way of ownership. We learned something like a communal ownership, like our friend from NPF proposed. And we also have another system that AOP proposed. So maybe we need diverse kinds of land reform and land ownership or the rights to land. And the third thing is that I think this equality is very important. How we could make sure that all kinds of people, not only just the poor, the middle class, or whoever want to be a farmer, they should be able to get to the land also. As our friend from NPF said, it is not for the poor, it is for the people, everyone in the society. And I think that we need to identify who are our enemy. Sometimes we feel that, oh, farmers in Thailand, you do something, we import because of the import and export. Maybe the farmers in Indonesia see us as an enemy, but it is not. We are the victim of something really bigger than us, like a state, like the capitalist. Right now, like our friend from Japan and from Taiwan talk about TPP, the free trade, the FTA, and the WTO. They are our enemy. Their influence really create difficulties to our farmers. So we need to identify who are our enemies. And finally, my last point is that we have to globalize our struggle and globalize hope. Viva Campesina! Viva! Thank you very much for this very exciting, and I myself enjoyed this session very much. I think everyone also found it interesting and informative, and not only just learn something from us, but we also need your help, your support in our struggle. And before we go into our real struggle, I think we need to feed ourselves first. As farmers are the feeder of the world, so we also have some food for you. Lunch. Is lunch ready? So before we end, I would like to, I almost forget. Okay, before we go out of this room, we have gifts for our speakers. I would like to invite Dr. Paniti Brown from the department, the Vice Dean of the Faculty on the Research and Expert Research.